I'm Vice President here. On our panel, we have Dan Russell, who is our CIO. We have Jace Holyoke, who does our marketing. And we also have Paul Zindel from Sophos. And so some of you have probably joined us for some of our other sessions and topics. We've been trying to do a webinar every month. We've been able to do that, I think, since February we started doing that. So we've kind of done all different types of topics. We've done a lot of topics regarding Sophos and specific solutions around Sophos. And today we thought we'd kind of peel it back and go to, basically our philosophy of security, which we've really adopted with Sophos, of this synchronized security idea and having all of our solutions working together and defending us as a team rather than a bunch of individual solutions. So today we're going to kind of do a little differently. I'll be very quick on a kind of an introduction of Pine Cove, and then we'll kick it over to Paul, and Paul will do some general overview, and then he's going to jump right into about a 20-minute demo showing some cool stuff in action. So that's kind of the plan for this. We are recording this, so if you want to send this to somebody after or miss part of it, I'll make sure you get that recording. Also, please ask questions. You can use the chat box there on the screen to ask questions along the way. I will jump in when I see them come in. I'll jump in and make sure our smart guys are answering those questions for you guys. So please, my goal is to make these interactive, so please jump in and ask some questions throughout the conversation. All right, I will get started. So first off, for those of you that may not know us, I know we have some current customers and we have some new faces or new names on the meeting here. So Pine Cove Consulting, we're based in Bozeman, Montana. We're an IT consulting company that, as you can see our dots, we're kind of all over the place throughout the Pacific Northwest. Really, our start and really our home base is Montana and Wyoming, and we fill the void for some customers outside that area. But we've been doing this for 24 years. We started the business in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and so we've been around. We've done a lot of different things for a lot of different customers. We've really adopted this cybersecurity practice as really our flagship of what we do now, and really think it's the future of our organization, and really the most important thing we can do for our customers is get them protected. We serve on some national security councils. Dan Russell, who's on the call, serves on actually Sophos's board for partners like us, so we are heavily involved in the direction of where Sophos is going, and really are up to speed on everything Sophos and where they're going and the industry's going in general. I recently joined the Meta Network Security Council team here in Montana, where we're trying to answer the bell for organizations across Montana specifically, trying to help people kind of get a handle on the cybersecurity problem and threat, and so that's been a fun project for us. And Dan was heavily involved in this, but we actually won the National Cybersecurity Award with Sophos in 2016, which was very cool for being a partner up here in the flyover states. It was a pretty awesome award for us to take home from Sophos last year. And there's a picture of us getting the award last year. And then the last slide I had is basically just what we've kind of adopted as our mission statement regarding cybersecurity, and really understanding the purpose of not only this meeting, but why is Pine Cove waking up every day, and how are we helping our customers. And we've narrowed it down to this, basically saying your organization has either been attacked, is currently being attacked, or will be attacked by cyber criminals. And our mission is to provide you with the knowledge, the vision, and the solutions to protect your assets. And so that's really what we're after here, is to educate a game plan of how to tackle this problem that we're facing. So that's really Pine Cove and our strategy here. And I'm going to kick it over to Paul to kind of introduce Sophos and let him do his stuff. So thanks again for everyone that attended, and again, please ask questions as they come up. All right, you should have control there, Paul.
Thank you, guys. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the territory engineer out of Denver, and I've been working with Pine Cove for a long time. Definitely one of my favorite partners to work with. They're always so knowledgeable on our product line, which makes my job a lot easier. What I'm going to be talking about today is something called Synchronized Security, and this is probably, I think this is the most interesting thing that Sophos does, and probably the least understood by our customer base, and for good reason. One, it's hard to have a 30-second commercial about this kind of thing, and it involves multiple technologies within Sophos. But I think it's something that is extremely unique to Sophos, and I'm going to be basically going through a quick PowerPoint presentation and then doing a demonstration on how it actually works in real life. So why are we doing this? Basically, there's a bigger attack surface, and when I say attack surface, it's more of different devices. So you have more laptops, but you also have a broader range of devices, and they happen to be all over the place. It's not just within the perimeter. It's outside the perimeter as well. And then you have more sophisticated types of attacks. Obviously, we're seeing all kinds of new attacks that are using exploits, exploit kits. If you were in one of our last seminars, we talk about how exploit kits work, how phishing as a service works, how memory resident malware works, and all that kind of stuff. So we're not going to get into the threat level too much here, but we're obviously seeing more sophisticated attacks that can't generally be blocked by a standard signature. We need much more advanced techniques, which we do very well. So what Synchronized Security does is, the unique thing about Sophos is that our product line spans the entire, security tool set. So essentially, most customers need everything Sophos has, whether it's through us or someone else. Every component of what Sophos does, whether it's firewall or endpoint security or mobile device management or server protection or encryption, these are all essential tools for security. And what a lot of our competitors do is they focus on one specific product. And some of our competitors not only just focus on one specific product, they focus on one specific technique within that product, which I'll talk about a little bit. So we've taken our product portfolio and created what we call a heartbeat. And the heartbeat is a communication protocol that is generated between the different product lines. Currently, today, we have a heartbeat between the firewall and the endpoint security, as well as the endpoint security and the encryption. So in the demo, that's what I'm going to be focused on today. But in the presentation, I'm going to be alluding into what is coming as well. So it's kind of a blend there, so you can see what our overall vision is. So the goal here is to give you unparalleled protection and to do a three-phased approach. We try to prevent the malware. We try to reduce the impact if you do get it, just like what Brandon said earlier, is that you either will get hacked or you're being attacked, or you'll be attacked in the future. That's pretty much the same philosophy we have, and we do an excellent job at prevention. But what happens if something gets through? So the automated incident response is extremely important, and it has not been dealt with in the industry very well, because a lot of companies, they focus on one particular thing and they can't actually provide an actual incident response that is beyond the human layer. So what we want to do is make it so that the user, the administrator, can look at things after the fact, and that's the third piece here, the real-time insight and control. The administrator can look at it when it's said and done, and not have to take action and multiple products and change configurations real quick and wake up in the middle of the night and do that kind of thing. We don't believe that it's realistic for the human to try to interject in a spread of malware and try to fix it. So Sophos takes care of it automatically, and then you can take a look at the reporting. So I'm going to show you all three phases of this: the prevention, the automated incident response, and then what you actually can see in terms of the analysis. Now, before getting into the synchronized security, it's really important to understand the defense techniques that we use at the endpoint and also at the firewall. Now, a lot of our competitors, these competitors that are they consider themselves next-gen endpoint, what happens is they will have one of these techniques. And we don't believe one of these techniques is enough. We believe we need to have multiple techniques. So we don't believe in a silver bullet. And a lot of people call this slide the revolver because there's a lot of bullets in here. There's basically two types of defense techniques if you want to break it down. There's pre-execution defenses and there's post-execution defenses. The pre-execution stuff, we've been doing it for a very long time with our Endpoint Advanced product, device and application control, blocking applications you don't want to allow on your network. Reputation security, very important one, which is basically blocking URLs, blocking IP addresses that we know are compromised. Signature, it's still in the product. It's not as prevalent as it used to be, but it still catches a certain percentage. I think 5% of the percentage of threats out there. Machine learning, that's a big one. If you haven't noticed, we acquired a company called Invincia, so we've spent about $100 million on machine learning, and that's coming in the real near future. And then you have the post-execution defenses. Malicious traffic detection, doing, basically blocking botnet communications. CryptoGuard is specifically an anti-ransomware technique, which I'm actually going to demonstrate in the demo. Memory scanning, so obviously there's memory resident malware now is a big problem, so we are able to scan the memory and stop things, exploits going to memory. Behavioral detections and exploit prevention, all of these things are important at the post-execution layer. So even within the endpoint itself, there are multiple techniques that need to be taken care of. Then you basically have the network protection. So you have all of these techniques in the firewall, and if you're familiar with next-gen firewall, you're probably familiar with most of these techniques. Intrusion prevention is a big one, advanced threat protection, blocking botnets, essentially, at the firewall, web filtering, sandboxing, and application control. So again, we don't think there's a silver bullet. Obviously, you have to have a layered approach, and the good thing about Sophos is we have all the layers. So what's the natural next step to having the layers? Making them intelligent so that they can communicate and take action when needed. So that's what I'm going to talk about next, is the communication between the firewall and the endpoint. And you also have communication between the endpoint and the encryption. I think they're both interesting. So I'm going to try to demonstrate them both at the same time when we get down to it. So here's basically what happens from the hacker point of view when they're looking at a Sophos customer. They have a few choices. Now, obviously, they can probably do some digging and maybe figure out what's on the client machine, and maybe they figured out that Sophos is on the machine. So they have some choices here. Now, if they leave Sophos alone, Sophos is going to see everything they do. Intercept X is going to block the attack if it's an exploit. Now, let's say they're savvy enough to disable Sophos security. Maybe the administrator and the customer leaked their credentials or something like that, or maybe they accidentally turned off tamper protection, and the hacker was able to disable the client. Well, at that point, there's going to be a red health status. So every machine is either green, yellow, or red, depending on what's going on in the machine. Is it malicious behavior? Is the heartbeat working? All that kind of stuff. So if there's a red health status, well, then the firewall can cut that endpoint off. And there's also some things that happen on the encryption, which I'll show you. They can try to disable the heartbeat, and if they're savvy enough to try to cut off that communication heartbeat, well, firewall is going to detect a missing heartbeat, and the same thing is going to happen essentially. So it's a very foolproof method, and usually when it comes to hackers, they're going to give up and move on to the next target at that point. Now, here's what it looks like in a little bit more detail. Now, this particular scenario is between the endpoint and the firewall. The heartbeat goes red, and the firewall is essentially stonewalling the communication between the client and the server. You can even cut off access to the internet if you want, and it's totally up to you, and I'm going to show you how that's done within the rules. Another scenario is that the endpoints are trying to maybe communicate to each other. What we are going to be doing in the near future is purely endpoint stonewalling and client isolation, which is basically going to be regardless of the firewall's communication, the client will actually quarantine itself. Now here's another thing that's really interesting that we're doing next: wireless heartbeat. So this isn't out today, but the Sophos access points are going to be able to detect a threat, and it will actually cut off those endpoints from the SSID. Now, a third thing we do, this is something within the firewall that we actually just released, and this is actually saying that the destination itself has to have a green heartbeat. So that means if your server is infected with something or something suspicious is going on the server, then those clients cannot connect to that server until it's cleaned up. So there's so many different vectors, and this is just the beginning, and I think that's the most exciting part of it, is there's so many different vectors of technologies that we can do with heartbeat, because we think about our portfolio. We have email security, we have mobile device management, right? We have obviously wireless. So there's all these different components that could potentially have this heartbeat, and that's basically what we're working towards, is where every component will be able to have this heartbeat technology. Now, at the end of an attack, you're going to want to see details, right? You're going to want to see what happened to the heartbeat, why did it go red, what machine was it, what user was it, what process specifically was it that actually caused the heartbeat to go red, and then what did that piece of malware do at the endpoint? Like specifically, what did it do to the endpoint? What files did it write to? What processes did it open up? What IP addresses did it communicate to? So we call that root cause analysis. So we really give you the full spectrum, and then at the end you can do an analysis. Now here's another interesting technology that's coming really soon. I was hesitant on showing this, but I think it's close enough that it's okay to show. But this is a pretty interesting feature. In order to really understand this feature, you'd have to understand next-gen firewalls and application control. But essentially, there's a big gap in application control within next-gen firewalls, and that gap is basically knowing exactly what on the endpoint is causing that traffic. So there's so much unknown traffic, basically, that is unknown from a networking standpoint, that hasn't been categorized and analyzed from a packet level. So basically, we've solved that because we have an endpoint security that picks up all these applications linked to the firewall. So this additional heartbeat functionality is going to be able to say, well, if it's an unknown application from the firewall, it can go in and figure out exactly what application it is, because it's going to query the endpoint through the heartbeat and say, what application is going to these, IP addresses and with these port numbers and yada, yada, yada. And then it just goes and tells the firewall exactly what applications those are. That's a pretty powerful integration that is going to be coming really soon. So that is synchronized security in a nutshell. I'm going to now switch over to a demo, and if you have any questions, I was notified you could certainly ask those questions within the chat window. So feel free to ask questions while I'm doing the demo, and I'll be able to get to your questions right after the demo. Now let me switch to my demo environment. So before I start triggering malware, I'm going to go over exactly what is in my environment. So I basically have 3 machines here. I have a server, and the server right now I'm showing the firewall's interface from the server. I also have a Windows 7 Pro machine that is on that domain, and the traffic from that Windows 7 Pro machine is going through this firewall here, this XG firewall tab. Now, the firewall, let's start with the firewall. So for those of you not familiar with our firewall, this is our XG firewall interface, and it's a very intuitive interface. There's obviously a lot going on in this. I can talk about this firewall all day long, but we're just going to focus on the heartbeat scenario. Basically, the heartbeat is showing 2 green machines. So the 2 green machines happen to be this particular server and this particular machine. So I just have those two machines running right now in the environment. So obviously in a bigger environment, you'd see a lot more, but right now I'm just, for simplicity purposes, I'm showing two. So everything's clean right now. Everything's good, right? Now, if I take a look at my firewall rules, let me show you a couple things here. This is a firewall rule allowing an RDP session to the client machine from the server. So imagine this is the administrator's server, and sometimes he logs into end user clients in order to do some troubleshooting. Now let's take a close look at this rule. So at first glance, this is a pretty standard firewall rule. You've got, from the LAN zone to the client zone, which is where the end user machine is. I have a user-based rule here. Now if I scroll all the way down to the bottom of this rule, you can see that I'm specifying that the destination heartbeat has to be green, meaning when I make a connection from my server to the client using RDP, if that client machine isn't green, it's not going to connect to that client, right? So pretty interesting, right? Now I could do the opposite if I wanted to. I could say, from the client to the server, the server needs to be green, because you can do it by source or by destination. Now let's take a look at what's going on the client machine. So this client machine, I'm about to run Sophos tester, which is going to simulate a ransomware attack. And I basically have a couple different clients running. I have the safeguard client. This is the encryption client. You can see that little wheel in the lower right corner. And if I right click on that client and display my key ring, I've got my file keys, everything's okay. So that means I can open up my files. If I take a look at this file here, here's a Word document that's encrypted. And if I'm a normal user and I want to open up that file, I can just double click that file and open it up. And this VM might be a little slow just because I got a lot going on, but you can see I can open up the Word document quite simply. This is actually an encrypted file, and when I open it up, it got decrypted and I can see it. To the end user doesn't know really what's going on, whether it's encrypted or not. We just, decrypt it in the background. So I can open up files. Everything seems fine on the system. Let me close out this Microsoft Word. Now, if I go to my server, let's say I want to RDP to that client. Well, everything's green, everything's healthy, so I should be able to. So if I RDP to the workstation, it lets me hit it. I can click it, type in my password, getting a little certificate error, but that's normal. And now I'm controlling that client machine, right? So everything is hunky-dory on this system, right? So let's disconnect this RDP session. And let's log back into this endpoint machine. Okay, so now let's make things not so hunky-dory. let's attack this thing, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run a piece of ransomware, and I'm going to run it from Chrome. So it's gonna actually open up a Chrome process and run ransomware, and it's going to target specific files on my machine. And while that's going on, I want you to look really closely on what's happening to that endpoint machine. I'm going to execute right now. Okay, well, the endpoint Sophos clean started, so clearly something is wrong. And look at my safeguard. There's an exclamation point on my safeguard client. Well, because the key is gone. I no longer have my encryption key from safeguard. So now if I try to open up my Word documents right here, it's not even going to open up. If I double click it, it's going to give me some kind of error, and I'm not going to be able to read that file anymore. So as that's loading, there we go. There's my Word cannot open the existing file because it's all scrambled up. Now let's say I go to my server here and I try to RDP to that machine, right? Remember that firewall rule that I made? Well, I'm RDPing to it. Nothing's happening. I cannot connect to it because the firewall actually cut me off from that client because of that rule that I made. Now, if I look at my firewall, you'll see that I have one system at risk. I can click on that little icon. It'll give me the machine name, the IP address, the username. And if I want more detailed reports from the firewall level, I can go into the reports and I can see the heartbeat report specifically, and I can see, what happened at that level. So here's my heartbeat report. And this is going to tell me, based on a certain date range, let's say I want to go back in time a little bit, generate that. Based on a certain date range, machines that went green and red over time. Here's the red one, giving me the IP address, the username, the destination, how many events it was. So a lot of details on the heartbeat itself. Now, while this is all happening, the machine is cleaning itself up. If I go back to my endpoint and I look at the event log, it says threat detected in the client. And if I look at the events, it says Sophos clean scan started. Now that's the beauty of it, is that it's cleaning it up automatically. When the cleanup is done and it's, the threat is removed, the client is going to be green again. And I'm going to get my encryption key back, and everything's going to go back to normal. I'm going to be able to connect to that machine. So while that's happening, and that usually takes a few minutes, let's take a look at Sophos Central. This is Sophos Central. This is where you're actually managing your endpoint security and your server security and many more products that we have. Now within Sophos Central, there's something called root cause analysis. Now root cause analysis is, this is that part of the slide that I showed you, after everything's said and done, and you want to see exactly what happened in that environment. Now here is a new entry, June 22nd, exploit CryptoGuard. So I'm going to click on that. And it says exploit CryptoGuard, 11 business files were involved. Here's the machine name, here's the username, and how it came in. Remember I said I was going to do it through Chrome. So this is the root cause for that attack. If I want to visualize this attack, you can get a pretty detailed view of what happened here. Now there's basically two pieces of information here that are the most important. You have your beacon event and your root cause. In this case, Chrome is both the beacon event and the root cause. The root cause is how it came in. The beacon event is how we figured out that it was bad, that it was malicious. Sometimes they're different processes, sometimes they're the same, but it gives me the exact process detail and the path and everything like that. Now, most importantly, it's telling me which files were affected. So it tried to write to these particular files. I got some settings files. I got 106 files here, a bunch of text files, because this was ransomware, so it was going after business files, in this case, text files. And then it's giving me the IP addresses. This is also very important. 5 IP addresses that this threat went out and contacted. So I can take this information if I wanted to, and I could maybe block it in my firewall or block it somewhere else in my web filter. What you do with this information is totally up to you at that point. Now, if you want to see things at a list view, you can certainly see it that way instead of looking at it through that big visualizer tool, but just a couple different ways to look at it. And you can export all this stuff via CSV or PDF. So it gives you a lot of detailed information, exactly what files were affected, what processes were opened up, registry keys that were entered, and all of this stuff gets cleaned up with Sophos Clean. Actually, I think it's cleaned up. If I go back into my Windows 7 machine, let's take a look. Yeah, it's cleaned up. So Safeguard is asking me for my credentials, so I'm just going to put in my password. And Safeguard was asking me for my credentials so that I can go get the key back, so that I can open up files again. Safeguard is back up. It's restored access to my files. My computer is secure. If I look at my events here, it says threat has been cleaned up. So everything's good there. Let's see if I can open up files. So let's go back to that Word document. Double click on that. Yep, I can open it up again. My system seems back to normal. If I go back to my server and go to my control center, looks like I have 2 green heartbeats again. If I try to connect to my RDP session one more time, it lets me do it. So basically, it's remediated itself. Instead of having the human factor having to, stop what you're doing and make rules and disconnect things, it's basically taken the appropriate action, remediated itself, and cleaned everything back up. So that's the power of Sophos Synchronized Security in a very quick demonstration. And I know that was fast, but I kind of have to move fast because the cleanup happens so quickly that I have to sort of abide by that timeline. Now, again, there's more coming. There's more things you can do with this. I only demonstrated a server to client communication. If you were to look at the firewall, rules, you can make it however you want. If you have a firewall rule that you want to attach a heartbeat policy to, you simply have to just do it within the rule. So let's say I wanted to block access to Salesforce from people who are infected, salesforce.com. I could do something like that. I can block off internet access. I can block off specific domains. I can block off specific parts of the network. Maybe I don't want them accessing an entire subnet if they are infected. So you can pretty much get as granular or as broad as you want with the heartbeat rules. So that pretty much concludes my presentation. I know we're supposed to leave some time for questions. So if there's any questions, please feel free to type those into the box there.
I have a question to throw out maybe to you and Dan, but
sure.
In regards to, I get asked this question a lot is, what if, I just purchased or I'm under a long-term agreement with my endpoint protection. Does that defeat the purpose here or can these things work as a silo, and then as they come on, they kind of start becoming that synchronized play, and how does that part work? Because, everyone struggles with the fact of, yeah, this is a great concept, but I might not be able to turn every one of these solutions over to Sophos tomorrow. How can I integrate those in kind of a phased approach if I had to?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about Sophos is every one of our products stands on its own. It has great security on its own. Just going back to the actual endpoint slide that had all of these techniques in there that you would get, it really does stand on its own as a best-of-breed product. But there's some additional magic, so to speak, that comes into play when you have multiple products. So in order for any synchronized security-specific technology to work, it's basically 2 products or more in order for those communications to happen. But certainly, and this is how most of our customers are, they don't just jump in and replace everything with Sophos. They might start with the endpoint security or the firewall. Those are probably the 2 most popular components, but then you've got your encryption. So we have plenty of customers that just use our safeguard encryption, and they might use a totally different firewall and a totally different endpoint security. Same thing with Intercept. You may have heard of Intercept. Some people might have Symantec antivirus, but they want to supplement that Symantec antivirus, for example, with Intercept, because Intercept has the advanced things like exploit prevention and the anti-ransomware component, root cause analysis, things like that. So you can certainly mix and match. Obviously, we'd like to see our customers go all in, and we see that slowly over time. As a customer gets one product, they tend to get more over time.
Okay. And then we had another question come in regarding online self-training resources regarding the XG operating system. I'm guessing just what resources are out there for that.
That's really funny you mentioned that. We're actually working on some how-to videos right now. So there's a couple different ways to be self-trained. If you look at the firewall itself, we try to make the firewall very, very intuitive so that you don't need much training to jump into it. But with any firewall, there's a learning curve. So if you've noticed in the new release, if anyone's seen this before, there's a little how-to video guide right here. And if you click on that how-to video guide link, it'll bring you to a Sophos community webpage that has a ton of how-to videos on very specific topics, like how do I do active-active configuration? How do I do web filtering? So that you can click on these little links and watch those videos, and they're very helpful. So we have that, and we also have the YouTube channel. The Sophos products channel has a lot of instructional videos in there as well. And in the near future, we're going to be opening up certification classes to our end users too. If you really want to get deep into it and do a 2-day certification, we're going to be offering that in the near future.
Great, thanks, Paul, and thanks, Michelle, for the question. Or Michael, sorry, not Michelle. Any other questions out there before we kind of wrap up? And obviously, you can reach out For those of you that have contacts inside of Pine Cove, you can use your normal channels. If you are new to Pine Cove, you can reach out to sales at Pine CC if you don't have a contact already. That is a good place to start, and we can definitely, one thing that we do as far as in conjunction with the solutions that we provide, but we do also do some security assessments where we'll run and kind of give you a benchmark and basically grade out all the different components of our synchronized security play and where we believe you stand currently. And we just started it this year, and we've actually had pretty good reviews from it from the customers that we've done it with. So if that's a place where you just don't even know where to get started, we've done a lot of those assessments with people just to kind of give them a lay of the land of where you're at now, maybe some holes or weaknesses that we want to look at, and then ultimately trying to get to that synchronized security play where everything is, secured and under that Sophos umbrella. So certainly reach out to us to do that, or really just anything, whether it's getting a demo of any of these solutions. We provide a lot of demo and licensing where you can kick the tires and try out the software and see how it works inside your environment. Any of those things we can help you with. So please reach out either to sales@pinecc.com, and we'll send that in the follow-up to this webinar with the recording, or reach out to your rep that maybe invited you to this webinar. So any other questions before I wrap it up, or any other comments from my team? Okay. Well, thanks again for everyone that attended. Thank you, Paul, for the demo and the slides. That was great. Again, we'll continue to do these on a monthly basis. So reach out and let us know how we can better suit you guys, whether it's with these webinars or anything else you have going on with your organization. So thanks again, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for being on. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.